Okay, so we are live, our first junior event of the year. And by the way, Cece, in honor of UVA, brought out my UVA Law sweatshirt back there. I thought about
Yes.
putting it on. It was a little too warm for that. Couldn't find my balsa hat from my Black Law Student Association from UVA, but found that. So just in honor of UVA today. But we are so excited to have Cece with us. You want to tell everybody what you do and a little bit about your role and things like that?
Yes, happy to. Thank you, Jen. So I'm Cece. Pronouns are she, her. I work in the Office of Undergraduate Admission at the University of Virginia. I serve as one of the associate deans there. I also lead our diversity, inclusion, and outreach efforts. So I like to say that I work with students who may think of themselves when they think of UVA and not automatically see themselves as a good fit for their many multifaceted identities, right? That could be gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, religion, income, and the list goes on and on. And my team and I work really closely together with the Office of Admission, but also the larger UVA community to ensure that we are a welcoming and inclusive place.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit about me.
I love that. That was a spot. Amy, don't you feel like you killed it?
Yeah.
I feel like I was like, well, thank you, Amy. And then we have Amy straight off of AP exam, straight off of decision day. We're still doing decision day. We're still making decisions. But Amy, thank you so much. You want to tell everybody who you are, what you do, and how you support the admission support group.
My name is Emily. I also go by Amy. I'm a senior at Hilton High School, and I'm also the ambassador of the College Admission Support Group run by Miss Jen.
And do you want to go by Amy or Emily today?
Amy's fine.
Okay. I always make sure because Amy has two names. So we're going to go by Amy today. So let's start with the thing that you actually said in your opening, CC. A lot of people feel like UVA is not the right fit for them. And I feel like since the Charlottesville incident, a lot of people are hesitant. How would you say, what's like one thing about UVA that you learned that you did not know until you got to UVA?
One thing that can I say it from the perspective of a student when I was a student?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. And then I'll say it from the other perspective. So one thing that I didn't truly understand until I arrived on grounds, because we say grounds at UVA, at UVA, was that there really is a community for everybody. I like to say that UVA is a community of micro communities. And so no matter who you are, no matter what your background is, no matter where you come from, what's in your bank account or not, you will find a community that fits your interests and fits your identities. And so that was really encouraging for me, that I found people that looked like me or worshiped how I worshiped or were interested in the things that I was interested in. And I don't think that I necessarily knew that fully. I think it was a hope of mine, but I didn't think I necessarily knew that fully before going in and being a part of the community. And then one thing I would say I didn't necessarily know until I returned to work at the university in different capacities is that in working at other institutions and admissions, UVA is a place that is not afraid to have hard conversations. And even if they are afraid, they still talk about it. And that is really encouraging to me, right? We have a very complex history. Our founding is very complicated. And so, those things that we're addressing through faculty, through administrators, students at every level. And I really appreciate that. So those are a few things that I learned and then on the admission side.
So I feel like that was my perspective as well, because the first time I came to UVA was for a football game. And it was like during the era where everybody, I don't know if you guys still do this, like the sundress era, like the seersucker suits.
Not as much.
Not as much. But it was very intimidating. I was there for like a high school college program. And I felt like, okay, I want to go to UVA Law School. So I thought it was going to be very stuck up, very, prim and proper, very, boat shoes, right? And then I found that there are different intersecting groups, right? So like I had my group of Black law students that I hung out with. I had my group of Black alumni or Black students. And then there was just, a lot of different groups that I could be a part of in the community. But I think the other thing I will say that did surprise me is the debates at UVA get heated, right? And so you will throw down. And I think the teachers and the professors encourage that. And they are like, okay, but what about this perspective? Have you considered this? What about this perspective? And I would say I had some of the most heated discussions and discussions that allowed me to really reshape my view of the world at UVA when I was on grounds, because UVA I think it comes off really formal from the outside looking in, but once you get there, it's really comfortable. Mm-hmm. Amy, is that something that you're looking at when you were looking through colleges? Were you looking at how they're perceived from the outside, and then how do you figure out what's actually happening?
I mean, yeah, I think just looking at advice from the students that actually go to and attend the school and how they were able to fit in and find a community in the school is how I find out about what the school is. But I think there's also a lot of different perceptions when it's outside of the school. Like it's somebody who never actually went to the school. There's a lot of, I guess, not lies, but things that are made up.
Misconceptions.
Yeah, misconceptions. So I think it's hard to I think it's more important to look at the students that are actually go to that school and actually have lived it than to look at the presumptions that are made.
And Cece, when we're talking about juniors or rising juniors, current juniors, how did they get that perspective? Is that something that you facilitate? Or if I'm a junior and I want to figure out what college is really like outside of the tour, how do I get that perspective? How would you recommend students get that perspective?
Yeah, I would say please do not be afraid to contact us. The admissions team typically works really closely with the student body. So at UVA, I really work very closely with student organizations and student volunteers. And we understand that you want to hear from admissions because you want to know how to get in. But after that, you really want to hear from the students. What is life like? What is it like in the residence halls? And what is the food really like? And how am I going to feel comfortable, right? All of those questions, I can give you my perspective, but you really want to hear it from a current student. And there are current students that actually want to speak with you. Right. And so to contact our office, contact me, contact any of the admissions offices that you might be considering, because there are students who actually want to have those conversations with you. And we're happy to get you in contact with those student organizations or leaders or someone who might be in your major that you're thinking about, or all of those things.
Amy, I know as we got towards the final week, one of the things that you did is you contacted admissions offices and asked to speak to advisors. How did that help narrow down your choices?
I think the advisors helped a lot to speak to them, because it told me exactly, especially because I want to be a pre-med student. So it told me exactly what I would be learning and what the type of environment is like in that exact program. So it helped. That was basically the final decision of which school I was going to go to. But just overall, just talking to them and figuring out what it takes to go through that is beneficial.
Would you say to juniors, do you wish that you had done that earlier, or do you feel like it was the right timing?
I think I may have wanted to done it earlier so that I could, when I was first doing my list and maybe talking to advisors and seeing what program would I fit in best would have helped.
And Cece, I think a lot of students feel like I can't contact admissions. I don't want to bother them. If I ask to speak to an advisor, they're going to think I'm I was about to be like the kids say thirsty. And I knew Amy was going to look up and be like, so, but I think a lot of students are afraid to talk to their admissions office. And I even heard this week and even last week, I'm not allowed to just ask them direct questions. I have to couch it somehow. So I had one student say, oh, well, I don't know whether I should take this or this to be prepared for college. I'm like, okay, well, who's on your list? Have you talked to them? And they're like, no, you can't ask them that directly. Why do you think students don't feel like they can talk to admissions? And what are some ways that students could be using admissions as they start coming up with their list, developing their list, and coming up with where they want to go to college?
I'm actually so glad you asked that, because I think there's a misconception that the people who read your applications are reading it to find the no, first of all, which is not the case, right? A lot of people think we're reading it to like figure out reasons to deny people, which is like not what we do. It's not what I do. And many times we get into admissions because we want to help people. We want to help students. We actually want to help you make those decisions and walk you through that process and make sure you're applying to the right program that's going to be a good fit for you. So we are nice, right? And so we want to help you. And if you think you're being thirsty, let us quench that thirst, right? Let us help you. So email us. I cannot tell you how many emails or calls that we get from families, from counselors, from students that are saying, I'm considering calculus versus statistics, or I'm considering this or this. What are your thoughts, right? And we'll have that conversation with you. We'll, let you know some of the requirements that you might have to go through when you get here. But I want you to know that we really look forward to having those conversations. Many times, large parts of our year are reading applications where we're reading and reading and reading. And we actually want that, that discussion and that contact. So please, it's what we're here for, right? We're here to serve students and families, not just read the applications and plan fun events, but we want to answer those questions. So contact us for sure.
And I think a lot of students feel like if I ask the wrong question, like if I say, one of the questions I tell people to ask is, if you like this campus and you love it, and maybe it's going to fit and maybe it's not. Admissions officers, we tend to, and not me, but they tend to know each other. So saying, I really like this campus, I hope I get into this college, but are there other colleges that you feel like would be a good fit for me? Like, that's a valid question, because that person probably knows more than anybody else. Oh yeah, like this college would be also really good for you because you're looking for this. And this college, some colleges on your list. But a lot of students feel like every time they talk to admissions officer, it's like make or break. And you guys are like, well, she said, like, can you talk about why do you think students have this perception that you want to deny? Is it because we're publishing acceptance rates and things like that, and it feels like it's getting harder and harder? Why do you think students feel like the role of admissions officers is to deny rather than to find the right fit? And how do you combat that?
Yeah, it's hard. And I think there's many reasons for it. One of them is it's the culture of college admissions, right? There are, I feel like you hear almost every year from so many institutions, we got more applications this year. Our acceptance rate dropped by this many, like our test, it's like we're always hearing about the numbers, but I always understand that there are people behind those numbers. And I never want to forget that. And we never want to forget that you've worked really hard. You have the questions, right? You're writing those essays. And I think the other part of it is most students now are used to being tested on everything, right? You're learning for the test. You're training for the test. So they think college admissions is a test. And so I'm nervous to call because if I say the wrong thing, somehow that's going to go on my file and they're going to remember me and deny me for that reason, right? And that's not the case. We are here to serve you, especially at a public institution. I will say at UVA, we are here to serve the Commonwealth of Virginia and the greater good. And so that's part of why we do common application kind of workshops and FAFSA nights and those sorts of things, even outside.
I'm like, FAFSA night.
Right,
we're going to bring a bus down, Amy.
We'll stay connected.
I'm like, and CSS profile night.
Yes,
Yeah.
right? Because we realize that UVA is not the best fit for everyone. But if we can help you find your best fit, and I can think maybe you're interested in a smaller school. Maybe I'm thinking about University of Richmond, College of William and Mary. Maybe, like if I can help get you connected to those schools and those institutions and their requirements, like I would love to do that. That's great. That's a win for us because either way, we're helping you and your family.
Right. Amy, I saw you nodding along. What resonated there with you? Like the testing and feeling like everything's a test?
Yeah, I think honestly, before I met Miss Jen and like going through the group, I would have never ever wanted to call like an admissions office. Because I feel like I think students feel like it's like, you're right, like a test, like it's everything is noted down, everybody will remember your name, and if you say the wrong thing, if you like, I think some students I've heard like they don't want to answer like talk on the phone because they feel like they're not going to talk professionally or talk the way that people would want them to. And I think that's honestly, my friends have done that and I've like forced them to call. But I think it's important to know that the admissions office is there to help you and it's not there to judge you. It's there to help you with like everything, not even to that college, to any other college.
And actually, Amy's sister, Stephanie, who goes to UVA, was like debating between this class or this class. And just, I was like, okay, well, then just call them. Call the colleges and see which one it's not to me, which one's going to prepare you for admissions. And I feel like a lot of times we focus on like, which one's going to give me a better advantage in admissions? It's you say that you are interested in this particular program or this particular major. So which one was going to better prepare you for that program and that major, as opposed to which one is going to prepare you for this? And I think a lot of times our students are trying to fit into a box as opposed to thinking that there are colleges out there actually looking for you. And UVA, even though UVA has a reputation it has, they are looking for you. Like it cannot function if they cannot find the right. Am I right about that, Cece?
Absolutely. Yeah, we need you to do our jobs. we're looking for you. We want to help you. So yes, I absolutely agree, Jen.
Okay. So I think one of the things I'm looking through my list, one thing that always comes up, and it always shocks me, I don't know why, people will come to me and they'll be like, my daughter is a sophomore and we haven't started. I'm so sorry. We haven't started yet. I'm so ashamed. And I'm like, why does she have to start before now? But I think especially in Northern Virginia, there's this perception that if you didn't start, I don't know where the starting line would be, maybe 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade in Northern Virginia. But if you didn't start before high school, you're already behind the curve. And what would you say to that, Cece?
Yeah, I would say it's never too late. First of all, right? So you're juniors now. You're like, I'm just getting started. Am I behind? You're not behind. I would say, what I encourage younger students to start thinking of is what they're interested in, right? What do you want to do? Who do you want to be? Is kind of the question that I like to ask, and let that guide you, right? Start listening to your counselors and your teachers. Those are the words of encouragement and advice that I give to younger students. But I think, and to continue doing well in school, of course, that's a no-brainer at this point. But if you're just starting out and you're like, I don't have my list, right? That's fine. That's okay, right? Start now. Start thinking about where you want to be and, class size and, just kind of what your interests are and how they align with various schools, right? Do you want to be in a suburban area? Do you want to be in a city, right? Those are two very different things and you can have different experiences. So it's not too late, right? And there are some, and I think it all goes back to like the culture of college admissions where it's always like, I need to one up this class. I need to one up my classmate. I need to do all these things where it's like, it makes me sad because I feel like, many students already have so much anxiety. They're dealing with so many mental health issues and wellness issues. And I really do not like adding college admissions and that stress, as too early on students, because it just creates for a hard time. So it's not too late to start thinking about those things now and continue doing well.
Amy, I saw you looking, because I know this is what I've learned is happening from Amy and everybody else. One, kids are trading transcripts to be like, I got in, this is how you get in. You have to take the same amount of classes. You have to do the same amount of extracurriculars. And I'm like, I remember one time somebody showed me a transcript. They're like, this is a UVA transcript. And I was like, there's six classes on here that I don't need. I can look through this, but I think students are hoping for a formula. They want something concrete, and yet they don't want it because they don't want to just be judged on their grades, but they feel like there's a formula. Amy, can you talk a little bit about stats and the pressure and things like that?
Yeah, I've seen it diminish recently, but before, I think it was like, okay, this person got into this school, I need to be doing exactly what I want they're doing. And I think it just puts pressure on the students to, I think, be something that they're not. Some students take this class because they saw somebody else take it and they went to that school, and that they didn't actually want to take that class, and they actually are not interested in the classes they took. So I think stats overall, just, I personally have never been like that, but I've seen students who've looked at other grades above them and people who've done great things or went to this school, and they think that's exactly what I have to do in order to get into that school. I guess some students, they do want that formula because it structures them and makes them do exactly what they're doing. But honestly, it's not. I don't think it's truly speaking of you. It's not a representation of who you are.
Cece, I feel like, especially in the pandemic, we're seeing kids, they're just different. Students look different, right? Than they did a couple of years ago. And the one thing that keeps coming up now for me is parents are very concerned about, well, they weren't able to do teams and they weren't able to do extracurriculars, and now they're not going to have this shot at college, and everything is now off. There's this deficit idea that goes along with admissions, where I haven't done enough, or if I've been rejected, it's because I did something wrong. Could you talk to that and why students should feel? I think, Amy, you said it perfectly. A lot of students try to transform into somebody they're not for admissions. Can you talk about, and I feel like UVA really takes a lot of pride in putting their admissions model into, we want to find different types of people and see who you really are. Can you talk about why students feel that pressure and what they could be doing to, I don't know, just feel confident in this process?
Yeah, I think, Amy, you're very wise, because you said it right. People are trying to conform into what they think is going to get them into whatever school, versus this is who I am, and I would be an addition to your campus. And that's what we're looking for, right? We are not looking for cookie cutter, has done X, Y, Z, and all of these things, because everyone's interest is different. Their background is different. Not everyone has the same circumstances or opportunities. And so we take all of those things into consideration as we are looking to build a community. And when we say that, I said earlier, it's all about micro communities and finding who you are when you get here. It's because we are really looking for that in the application process. And so be who you are. I always tell students, even when you're writing your essays, and if you are a funny person, add a little humor to your essay. If you're not, please don't, right? You don't need to write about Thomas Jefferson in order to get an UVA. He's not your favorite person, and I'm okay. He's not mine either, right?
All right. Ooh, slander. So
be who you are. If your main focus is band and that is where you put your time, That's great. You don't have to go out here and join 15 clubs just to think you're going to get into a university. It's about exploring who you are. And I think we forget that in high school sometimes because people are just so focused on like, I'm getting in here and I need to do these things. Explore that. Do your best academically, explore that and let that come through in your essays and your extracurriculars. Like talk to your recommenders about it for your letters of recommendation, because we're not looking for one sort of person or one sort of student or someone who's interested in one thing, right? We have very many schools. Our nursing students might be very different from our kinesiology students versus our engineering students, because that is just kind of what we're looking for. And it differs, it varies.
I think your colleague Dean J talked about how if you go to Maryfield and you're looking at like, oh, this is structured weird, like the parking garage should be facing this direction. And meanwhile, I'm like, where's the popcorn? Where is the movie? That kind of gives you a sense of like, how do you view the world and what are the things that you gravitate towards? Because I would never be thinking about a parking garage, like never. And I think a lot of students feel like they have to conform. And I tried to say admissions can be easy if you start looking at who values what I have to offer right now. What institutions are supporting the ideas that I need to support, the development that I want to see, and how do I get those opportunities? Amy, you just went through the grinder that is college admission. What do you wish you had thought of as a junior that you did not think of until after the process?
I think what Cece was saying about like seeing what you like, whether you like city schools or like more closed off schools. I think that's what I didn't do as a junior. I didn't really see what I like in a university or what I would value in a university before I actually got into the college admissions like thing. So I think that is what I would have wanted to do and actually list my interests and actually do that so that when I go to do my list, I already know what like things I value, what interest I have, so that it's easier to make a list for college.
And I always say Charlottesville is a dangerous place to visit because, I mean, and maybe I just haven't met that person, but it's hard not to fall in love with Charlottesville. Like it's just very idyllic, you know, like it's like a mixture of city a little bit, but like a little bit of suburban and very mellow. I would say Chapel Hill has the same feel. You know, I always tell parents, don't send your kids to Florida or California unless you want them to go to Florida or California, because it can be very dangerous. But as people start touring, what are the things that they should be looking at and looking for, Cece? And what are some recommendations that you have for juniors as they start making decisions about where they should go?
Yeah. I think it's first kind of doing what Amy said, is kind of figuring out what you want. And then if you are able to visit those schools, whether virtually or in person, ask questions, listen. First, I would say listen. If there is an info session, if you are being brought around by a tour guide, listen to what they're saying. What does the university value? What can it add to you? How can you find yourself in that community? What the admissions officers, what the tour guides say, I think speaks a lot to who the university is and what you can do there just by listening. The other thing I would say is don't be afraid to ask questions, right? If you have a question about, I don't know, language houses, I'm just throwing out something, right? Ask that, right? You know, those are the things that, you know, I always say, like, the college time is the one time that you can really be selfish because you're really trying to find your fit, what works best for you. So when you begin to explore that, ask those questions, listen, get a feel out. I'm a vibe person. I don't know, that might be, but like, get a vibe. You know, when you walk into certain places, you're like, okay, all right, I can see myself here. Or you're like, nah, this is not for me. I remember having that feeling when I visited some schools, like, you know what, this is a great place. This is not the place for me. And that's okay, right? That is why you do those virtual tours, or that's why you call the admissions office or come visit us. Because again, we want you to be happy where you go to college and be successful, right? We don't want to set you up for failure. So we're not trying to put on a facade. We're really trying to show you who we really are. So listen and ask us those questions. Hopefully I answered your questions.
No, I think you did. I think that was great. And, I think the pandemic opened up the demand and the need for more virtual tours. And the virtual tour market is like, I mean, I wish I bought stock in companies that were doing virtual tours before, because the virtual tour market is booming, right? And so I think for me, but you're right. I mean, I'm not a huge feels person, because I always tell students rich colleges tend to feel very good, right? Like it can be a Disneyland experience sometimes, but you do have to have safety. You have to have security. You have to envision yourself on the campus, but also you need to look into like the opportunities. And I love what you said, which is listen to what the tour guys are pointing out, because that's what the college has said. This is what we value. So therefore, this is what we want to put up front. This is what we want to talk about. And what they are highlighting is doing that. Amy, I know you were in a situation where Amy's mom, I love Amy's mom. I love her, but she's like question queen on a tour. She's like, question. How did you find a way to get your questions answered while your mom is getting her questions answered? Because your mom comes prepared every time with, okay, just 60 to 70 questions before we go. How did you find a way to get your voice in?
My mom is really like, she has everything in the book. She knows me, so she knows like everything that I'm interested in. So even sometimes she would, like, I remember when I went to University of Richmond tour, the lady who was giving the tour, my mom just like walks all the way up to the front, and she just starts asking her questions like about volleyball, about like their SEA, stuff like that. I'm like, like, hold on. But I think, honestly, I think you just have to take charge in situations like that. So I would like ask my questions that my mom probably wouldn't like know, or like things that I'm interested in that my mom probably doesn't even know I'm interested in. So I think just taking charge in your questions and maybe coming prepared before with what you want to ask the university or what you don't know about the university, I think that's what you should do.
And CC, it's not one hit, right? Like it's like if you don't ask it on tour, you're done. So, but like how do students who are kind of getting their first taste of independence, how would you prepare them? Like what are some things that they should be looking at before they tour and getting ready so that they can ask the questions and have a continuing conversation with the university?
Yeah, I would first say to do a little bit of research if you can, right? Even if you're like in the car on your way there on your phone, as everybody's on their phone, look at their website, right? Already have an idea of the majors, the programs, the opportunities that you may be interested in, right? If you're really big on languages and study abroad, maybe just Google that real quick, right? Do a little bit of research to have an idea of what you're walking into. And I think that might help target your questions a little bit. And then I would also say, as someone who identifies as a Black woman, there sometimes can be a thought of, in America, I will say, sometimes can be a thought of, should I be asking this? Is this too much? Am I going to stand out? Am I going to look weird for asking this question? I want you to know many, and most students are thinking that. A lot of students are nervous to ask questions on tours, right? No matter how they identify in many ways, for many different reasons. And so I want you to know that that is normal. It is completely normal for you to be a little bit nervous, maybe a little anxious, maybe you don't want to speak up in a crowd, right? So just know that that is a normal kind of thing to process and go through. But if you can push through that and ask those questions, if you don't feel comfortable in the moment, right? Walk up to that tour guide at the very end when it's just you and them, right? Or you and that admission counselor, maybe not in the big group. Get their card, get their information. There are student chats now, right? Now that we've had this pandemic and more people are doing online, where you can literally chat with the student from your computer or from your phone. So there are other ways for you to get involved and get those questions answered and kind of get a feel for if it's going to be a good fit for you, even if you are a little bit nervous. I would encourage you to push through that, but I know that that's hard. So just a little piece of advice.
And I would just say, if you're going to be nervous the first time because it's unfamiliar. Anything that's unfamiliar is going to make you nervous, right? You've never been to college before. So I think it's easy for adults because we're like, it's not a big deal. Just go talk to this person because we've been to college. We know what it's like, right? But this is a whole new experience for you. So don't consider the tour maybe the practice run. Like the first time you tour, like that's a practice run. Okay. I'm going to try to ask one question this time. Then I'm going to try to follow up with this person. Next time I'm on campus, I'm going to try to follow up with this person, because for me, getting different perspectives allows me to see the full picture, and that's how I work. But you don't have to get it right the first time. Like, it's not one and done. If you don't ask the questions now, forever hold your peace. Like, it's not like that. So feel free to send questions in as they come up. And I think, again, don't think you're bothering people who are being paid to be bothered, right? They're being paid to be bothered. They're not knocking it up. Okay, here we go. It's time for the test optional questions. We all knew. Okay. I don't know why I'm actually really nervous about the test optional question. Okay. This came out recently, and I've heard this a lot this season. And I don't know if you guys actually publish how many students are accepted with scores or without scores, whatever. I don't necessarily want to touch that, but a lot of people are under this conception that if a college has accepted more students with scores, that is saying it's not really optional. We prefer the test. What would you say to that?
That is not necessarily true. What we are finding in the college admission realm is that, well, let me first start and say this, Jen. At UVA, I can truly say that we are a test optional school. I've spoken with some other colleagues and they say they're test optional, but like they really want you to submit it. At UVA, testing has never been the driving factor in our admissions decisions. So we were actually pretty excited to go test optional, and we truly mean that. So you will not be at a greater advantage if you choose to submit testing. You will not be at a disadvantage if you choose not to submit test scores. So that's that. I will say, though, what we are finding is that the students who are choosing to submit their scores are typically the students who are in the top range of our testing band, right? And so they've done well. They feel good about it. They're going to submit them. So we're not seeing the range of test scores that we have seen in the past. So you might see that in the numbers, but it doesn't necessarily reflect our policy and our process in the admissions office. So I hope that helps, but we truly are truly test optional.
I mean, I know kids who've been, and I don't want to say like they messed up because they've been rejected, right? But I know students who've been rejected with a perfect score from UVA. I've seen kids with scores that I didn't think could get into UVA when I was under the conception that it was. A lot of students believe, and Amy, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the number one thing that I've heard. And I actually believed this when I was doing test prep. I'm still doing test prep, but I believed this maybe 4 or 5 years ago, where all things being equal, all things like Parent Trap situation, Hallie, I forgot the other girls, Hallie and Annie they meet during admissions. They're completely identical. You know, all things being equal, it's coming down to a test score. What do you, you're like, no. What do you say to that?
I would say no. I will say for UVA, and I'll also say, Jen, I have worked at some institutions where it does come down to testing. and they are a test forward institution. UVA has not been one of those institutions where our focus, what it'll come down to, most likely will be transcript. That is the focal point of our review. We review comprehensively, but the transcript is going to be our focus. Testing, because testing is very problematic. We that's not our driving factor. It just never has been, and it will remain that way in this test optional space.
And I would say the schools that are test forward are very transparent about that. Like I think the schools that have gone back to the test, I was not surprised that they're going back to the test. And when you talk to them, they will tell you that. Amy, how did you decide if the test was a good data point, not a good data point for you? Because I don't think you decided not to test, right?
Mm-hmm.
How did you make that decision?
Honestly, I don't think I even thought about it. I think I was just like, don't think a test would represent me. I think what I've done for the 4 years of high school and who I am as a person will represent me. I don't think I didn't even decide oh, should I take the SAT or not? It was just like, I don't think it's going to represent me. Even if I do get a high score, I just don't feel like a test score would represent me. So I never really thought about it.
And Cece, would you say that is the approach? And I think Sean and Amy and I talked about this. Is it a good data point for you? Do you feel like it provides context that's not in your application or represents you well, as opposed to, I'm going to lose out if I don't take the test. I'm going to miss out on opportunities if I don't take the test. Do you feel like that's an approach that students should be taking? I think this is a good representation of my ability, or I don't feel like this is going to add much to what I have to say and what I'm trying to show.
Yeah, I do. And I think that personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with taking it and seeing what happens. I was someone I've never been a great test taker. I'm more of a talker, if you can't tell. And so testing has never been a great factor of my academic achievement or any of those things. So I probably would have taken it and chosen that's not me. My transcript, my grades, who I am in my application, that's where I'll put my best foot forward. I'm not going to shine the brightest in testing. And other students are I'm a great test taker, and that really aligns with who I am. I shine there. I'm going to sit it, and I think that's great. But I think it's great that more and more schools are giving students the option, especially because test anxiety is real. Test preparation for different schools and different areas is very different. So I agree with asking that question to yourself.
And I also tell students now, before you invest in test prep, and as somebody who is constantly telling people, I wouldn't retest. I'm looking at the data. I know the tests. I've been doing this for years. I wouldn't retest at this point. The energy that you're going to take from this test, you could take a college class over the summer. You could explore your extracurricular more, whatever. But I always tell students, talk to admissions as you're making those decisions. Say explicitly, I'm thinking about investing this amount of money into test prep. What do you think? And the admissions officers that care about it are that's a great use of your money and a great use of your time. And the admissions officers who don't would say, well, what other things that could you do, right? But the one thing I did want to address, Cece, because I hear this a lot, is people say I'm not a good test taker. And I always say the test is actually designed for you to fail 2 to 3 times. It is not designed for you to succeed immediately. And so it's not that people are bad test takers. It's that the test has reasonable wrong answers that draw you away from that. And so especially if you're a student with accommodations and your accommodations aren't met, or you're a student that has anxiety and it's bringing up a lot of anxiety feelings, that's a good reason to say, you know what, maybe I'm going to take it one time. But if it's so overwhelming, and you know that you can stand on your own academically, don't feel like it's a risk. Because I think a lot of students don't realize, and you were talking about the transcripts, Cece, I don't think they realize that's 4 years of hard data. Would you say that, Cece?
Yes, yes. I'm so glad you said that. I always say we focus more on the transcript because that's 4 years of what you've done in and out of the classroom every day versus 3 hours in a random high school cafeteria on a Saturday morning. Like
Right.
that's very different. And we want to look at that longer data point.
I'm sorry, that was like a Baptist moment for me. I was like, longer data point. So, Amy, do you feel like your generation's there's a different relationship with the SAT and ACT now? How are people making those decisions?
I think some people are still in that realm of like, I should take it because the colleges want to see it. I think I've still seen some students who don't really believe in test optional. They don't think it's real, or like it's not, because it's the SAT and ACT have always been a thing that you have to do. Like it's been in like the kids shows when we watched, and like you have to take it, and we grew up thinking, yes, that's what you need to do. Your senior year, that's exactly what you're doing. Your junior year, you got to do that. And I think there's still some students who believe that, but I've also seen students who've decided that they don't need to take it because they've done so much academically for 4 years, and they put their all into it. And I've seen it with my sister. She has really bad test anxiety, and really like she does overboard. So when she was trying to take the SAT, she took a lot of time to study and study and study and study. She put
13,000 problems,
she
yeah.
put a lot of pressure, and then ended up not taking it because she realized it came out to one thing with Miss Jen. It was just like, I don't need to take this test to prove myself.
Actually, I think it came down to the conversation with Dean J. I think it did. It came down to the and I think that's the thing. I think people have this perception that admissions is one size, and it's one size fits all. And it's really driven from like the top, right? Like, oh, you need this, this, and this, and this, and this. But every institution is different, and you all have different institutional priorities. So talking to the colleges on your list, like it might be true that somebody talked to a college on their list, and they said, we think you would be best served by taking the test. That doesn't mean that that's true for your list. Cece, can you talk about like institutional priorities and how colleges are different from one another, and what are some of the things that UVA values?
Yes. Institutional priorities is definitely something I didn't think about when I was going through the college admissions process, right? I was thinking more about what I wanted and what I needed, but I didn't necessarily think about like, what is the college looking for? And it does vary per school. There are some schools that are trying to bolster their orchestra, others that are trying to get more math and science students because they just built a building. There are other students, that are trying to build up their arts program. And different schools value different things. Something that's really important to us at UVA is something that we look for. Students may or may not have heard the term student self-governance, which is like very UVA specific.
I knew you were about to say it. I was like, yes,
very a UVA buzzword. But for us, we mean it because I like to say when you're in high school, right, your principal, your teachers, the counselors are the ones making the rules and enforcing them. But at UVA, we flip that, where students are the ones that are really making those rules and enforcing them, and encouraging students to follow them. And so we really look for students who are going to be involved, who want to be a part of the community, who value and respect one another. And so those are the things that we value. And so we want our students to value them as well and be a part of that community. We are a big school. And so we have a lot of different majors. We're also looking to fill all of those schools and all of those programs, to be frank. Sometimes it's butts and seats, right? So we're looking for students. We're looking for all types of students. Students who are interested in the arts and the humanities and the sciences, because we have all of those various programs. So hopefully that's hopeful. I'm not sure.
What do you say to students who say, I shouldn't apply to that major because it's more competitive? I should just like try to sneak it. Like a lot of students are game playing, like doing a little game theory to figure out which majors are less competitive, more competitive. What would you say to that?
Yeah. Yes, that's hard. And I would say from a UVA perspective, all of our schools and programs have about the same acceptance rate. They're all just about as equally competitive. We may be looking for different things and different students for those programs, but I have worked at other institutions where it differed vastly. And so we would get that question and we would say, you know, and I say this now at UVA, I encourage you to apply to the program that you are really interested in, because at a place like UVA where there are various undergraduate schools and programs, there's no guarantee that, you know, if you're really interested in nursing, you don't apply directly to the nursing school and you instead apply to the College of Arts and Sciences. There's no guarantee that you can get into the College of Arts and Sciences and then transfer into the School of Nursing. That's just a fact, right? That's just a numbers thing that I like to tell students. So if you're really interested in nursing and you want to be a nurse, apply to nursing, right? I would say that at the other schools that I've worked for as well. It's really not about gaming the system, because it's all competitive, especially when you're looking at highly selective institutions. It just is. But we really want to see, again, who you are, not who you think we want you to be and what we think we want you to be interested in. We're just kind of looking to see, does your interest align with that program, and are you going to be fully prepared for that program?
And we have one question coming up, but the one thing I hear junior summer, sophomore summer is, what should I be doing this summer to get ready for college admissions? Like, is there something I should be doing? And I'm like, the things that your kid likes to do. And they're like, that can't be true. That can't be true. And I'm like, but especially what we're seeing is you could really, like, the money that you could be spending, and I know I'm supposed to be an ACT and SAT prep person, but the money you could be spending on SAT and ACT prep, you know, like I'll tell parents, we could spend a whole summer and maybe get the score, maybe not. But let's say $300, like $400, $500, sometimes $1,000. If you invested that in your kid and something they actually like to do, they could probably do something amazing with that money. And that could tell the best type of story for students. Is there, like, what should we do this summer? And then I'm going to ask this question that we just got. But when you hear people say, what should we be doing this summer to make sure our kid is on track for UVA, what do you say?
Yeah, I got this question. Oh, you get it all the time, but I got it the other day and I was like, well, what are you doing? What do you want to do? That's what you should be doing, right? Some people think, like, I need to do research and I need to do 100 hours of community service and I need to do a part-time job. And it's like, okay, you might need to take a breath because you've been working all hard all academic year. And maybe you really are interested in community service and that's great. Or maybe you work more in your church or your mosque, or maybe you know, you're going to do a trip with your family, or maybe you just want to work in the garden. Like, all of those things are interesting, right? And we would love to hear about all of them. We, again, want to see you and not who you think we want you to be.
Yeah. So this question came up. What do you need from school counselors to better prepare students for the admissions process? I've been trying to help students see that they have to develop themselves historically and they are more than a number and a score. I love that question. I'm going to contact you as well because I love that question. But Cece, what do you say to that? I'm going to actually put it back on the screen just in case.
I was about to say, can I see it one more time? Sorry.
What do you need from school counselors to better prepare students for admissions process? I've been trying to help students see that they have to develop themselves holistically. I think I said historically, holistically, and that there are more than a number or score.
Yeah. What do we need from the school counselors? I think school counselors, I would like for them to continue to be very honest with students. And sometimes that is hard. And we know that that's a difficult conversation, and we are honest with them too on the admission side if they call and ask us certain things. To continue to be honest with them and to continue to encourage students to explore who they are. And, you know, it's, as you said, it's not just about a number or a score. We are reviewing your entire application. We are reviewing your essays, your letters of recommendation, your awards, all of those things that you do, we want to see. And of course, as I keep coming back to, academics is the most important. So That's our main focal point, but that's not your whole story. And so we want to see your whole story. So the more that admission counselors can encourage students to tell their story and to be honest, that's really helpful to us.
And I think one of the things that I tell people is like, because there's this narrative that I don't like, and I feel like, especially in the independent education consultant community, it's perpetuated for profit, right? Like your counselors don't know anything. And I think the thing is like you have to ask your counselor, how can I best utilize you? Like what are you good at? Like what are the things that I need to be leaning on you for? Because counselors are people too, right? But they tend to have a whole view of, well, when we've submitted applications to this type of school, this is what they respond to very well. And this is the type of classes that they're looking for those type of programs. Oh, you're not going into that engineering. But I think sometimes students turn to the internet or independent counselors because they don't want the truth. They want to feel like there's a possibility even when there may not be. And I think that's the problem, is that the counselors and the admission counselors tend to tell the truth. And sometimes that truth is you're not ready to receive it. So yeah. And then she also as, do you know if the trend to lean towards test optional again next year? You guys are test optional next year?
We are test optional for next year. We have not yet declared what will happen past next year, but for students who are applying, I wish I could mic drop and have the answer for you all. Right. But for next year, we are. I'm just not sure after that.
And I would say talk to each institution, because I think it can change based on who's coming in, who's leaving, who's the admissions offices are different as well. I'm looking through our question. Best way to gauge campus life if you're an underrepresented student on campus, a student of color, you know, we're all Black females. So like that's something, figuring out where to get the hair done.
That's real. It's real.
I mean, for me, I'm like that. UVA was big for me because it was 2 hours from my hairdresser, and I was like, I'm not letting anybody else. After going to Blacksburg, I'm not letting anybody else touch my hair. But how do you figure out? Can I fit in? And how do I? If you're underrepresented and maybe your tour guide is not from your community or not within your intersections, how do you learn about the campus?
Yeah, I would say many institutions have days for diversity days, or days for students who are interested in getting more information in Black or Latinx or Native experiences on grounds, right? If you are able to attend those days, I cannot tell you how helpful it is for you to learn specifically about the LGBTQ plus community, or the Native community, or the Black community, right? That was very important for me, and I find that it is very important for students. So if you are able to do that, great. Also, many institutions have funding or help to get you there. So if you need that, reach out. Not a lot of people know that. Also, as I said earlier, speak with the student. If you're not able to get connected, right? If your tour guide doesn't identify in a way that matches with your identity, reach out to the admissions office and say, I am interested in getting connected to, right, a Black woman who's interested in engineering. Love it, right? That's not a strange request for us. And you might feel like a little nervous writing that. It's not. We get them a lot, and we would be happy to connect you with various offices or support services or students so you can get the real deal. I always say not just the numbers, because there's a lot more behind the numbers, but really get the real deal of the experience.
Amy, you talked to some people last days. Do you wish you had done it earlier? Or do you feel like you did it at the right time? Or not, like, because I feel like now I'm framing it as like you should have done it earlier, but no, I feel like it came at the right time for you, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, how important were those student conversations?
I think the student conversations put me in their perspective and put me in their like community and how they fit into the school. So I think it helped me decide if I would be able to. Like, I wouldn't, obviously you take it with a grain of salt. You don't take like their whole thing because you're different than everybody. But I think talking to like students that actually go there and actually experience what happens at that school helps you make your own decision if you would fit in there.
And also just know that nobody does a day in the life on YouTube on a bad day. They're like, day in the life. Okay, guys, I have finals. It's horrible here. It's raining. It's not like I would never do a day in the life in Blacksburg in the winter. Like it's not, I'm not gonna be like walking around. Okay, guys, we're about to walk across the drill field. Sub-zero. Let's go. But I think just know that take everything with a grain of salt. And yeah, I think that's the truth. Talk to multiple people. Talk to as many people as you can and get a sense of it. And as you narrow down your list, open up your questions. So, Cece, we could talk to you forever. We really appreciate you coming. Is there anything that we haven't covered that you feel like you want people to know about UVA? You know, as a former Hokie, it's a little hard for me to say the words UVA. It's hard for me to say Wahoo Wah, but I did go there for law school. Again, we have our little sweatshirt up. But is there anything that we need to know going in, and any last recommendations for juniors?
First, I would say thank you. I've really enjoyed our conversation. This is great. I would say to know that you all hold so much power in the process, right? You get to choose where you visit, who you make those calls to, where to apply, and where to go. And I know that we hold a little bit of power because we get to decide, you know, who's admitted or whatnot, but that's only one piece of it. So I really do want you to know that you hold a lot of power in this process. And you're amazing. And I always say there's a lid for every can, right? If you are interested in going to a school, you will find the school that fits your interests and your needs and your desires. And don't be afraid to give us a call. I'm more than happy to chat with you about anything or to get you connected. And we're here for you.
I lied. Last question is this. If a student is rejected, is it because they didn't do enough?
No. And it's not a reflection of who you are. Sometimes it's a reflection of institutional priorities, numbers, so many things. We unfortunately, as a highly selective institution, our acceptance rate this past year was 19%. We unfortunately deny many students who are fabulous and fantastic. And it is very hard for us to make those decisions. So that's a great question, Jen. Absolutely not.
It feels personal because you wrote a lot of personal things, but I think I'll look at a transcript of like, why was I rejected? And a lot of students will be like, I need to talk to them. I just need to know. And I'm like, you don't though, because they're going to tell you you were qualified. I would say again, and I think Amy, you were on when we talked about this, 95% of the students who apply are qualified. It's not about qualifications. They just didn't have space sometimes. Like that's it. And like, but they had space for somebody else. It doesn't mean you did something wrong. And I think a lot of students right now after decision day are like, I wish I had done more. I wish I had done that. And I'm like, you could have done that and still gotten the same outcome because it had nothing to do with that. So Cece, we're going to be up there in Charlottesville for CCS, the CSS day, FAFSA day. We're going to set up days. I'm going to just like ship buses down there.
Yes.
We'll be like, Jen, it's 8 a.m. Yep, we're here's the FAFSA. But how can people reach out to you and get more information about UVA? I'm going to say Wahoo Wah for you. I'm going to say it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know that took a lot. Yes, feel free to reach out to me. My email address is my name, CC, literally 2 C's, a period, then Duncan, DUNCAN @virginia.edu. Email me at any time and I'd be happy to set up a Zoom with you or a phone call or connect you with the student organization or students. I'm happy to help in any way that I can.
Amy, decision day is still happening.
Yeah.
Pretty soon we're going to announce where you're going. Any last thoughts before you get off?
No, I think the juniors should just be who they are and focus on who they want to become. And you'll be great. You'll be fine.
Of course, Amy and Stephanie always end with like the perfect last saying every time we do this. Like, yeah, nothing, just here's a perfect word at the end. But thank you guys so much. I'm going to sign off and then say goodbye to our guests. But thank you guys. contact me if you have any questions. I really appreciate the questions today. They were very, very helpful. And if you guys have any information, please reach out. I very much as I hate to say it in my hokey heart, I love UVA for undergrad. I know I'm going to get killed, but I do love UVA for undergrad. A majority of our students last year went there. This year, we have a lot of students from Hilton going to UVA. So I feel like that is a huge win for us. And I cannot wait to see who our little Wahoos become. So we love you guys and we really appreciate all you've done. So goodbye, everyone. We're waving and then we're ending. Bye, everyone.